Poinsett Bridge was built in 1820 and is an old bridge in northern Greenville County that was named after early Greenville resident Joel Poinsett. It is the oldest bridge in Greenville and even all of South Carolina. The bridge was part of the original state road, a toll road that ran from Charleston through Columbia and into North Carolina. Constructed from locally quarried stone, the Poinsett Bridge is one of the 3 stone bridges along the stretch of the state road referred to as the Saluda Mountain Road. Poinsett Bridge is believed to be built by Robert Mills, who also designed the first Washington Monument in Baltimore and the better-known Washington Monument in Washington, D.C. The bridge was built with locally quarried wedge-shaped rocks that were not erected with concrete. The bridge is 130 feet in length and has a 15-foot high Gothic arch that allows the water to run underneath of it. Nestled in the heart of downtown Greenville, Springwood Cemetery fronts North Main Street and is bordered by Academy Street, Church Street, and Elford Street. It is known for its beauty, landscape, and rich history. The cemetery is the resting place for many of Greenville's most prominent citizens. However, the cemetery is not simply a memorial to great names, for it is the resting place of more than 10,000 mortal beings from all walks of life. With approximately 2,600 graves with no headstones. The great variety of monuments in the cemetery commemorates the famous as well as the now forgotten, making it a compelling lesson in Greenville's history. Springwood Cemetery, only 1 acre in size at the time, was first opened to the public for burial in 1829. The overflow of a spring once passed through the cemetery, for which it was believed the cemetery was named in, what later became a small family burial ground for her daughter and son-in-law, Elizabeth Blackburn Thompson and Waddy Thompson. From these beginnings grew a larger Springwood Cemetery as we know it today. Conisty Mill is an old cotton mill that used to operate along the Reedy River. The mill was called Reedy River Manufacturing until 1909, when it was named Conisty Mill after the Cherokee word running waters. In 1830, a man known as Vardy McBee, or the father of Greenville, purchased 295 acres of Conisty Village in Greenville. McBee and his mechanical supervisor, John Adams from Scotland, built a dam at Conisty Mill, which is said to have been built after a much smaller dam that was already there. Soon McBee turned Conisty into a regular village, adding a chapel and forming Conisty Lake. McBee soon after sold the mill, and the new owners started making Confederate Army uniforms during the Civil War. The mill ceased production in the 1970s, and Hyman Brand purchased the former mill and its buildings shortly after the mill foreclosed in 1978. Brand is hoping to sell the buildings for redevelopment, and in 2014, Conisty Mill, as well as the dam and the lake, were added to the National Register of Historic Places. Built in 1838 as a gift to his daughter, Josiah Kilgore built and gifted a Hart Pine House, which still stands today as one of the oldest surviving structures in Greenville County. The old farmhouse is a Palladian-style house that was very different compared to the other houses around it. The Kilgore-Lewis House, built in 1838, became the headquarters for the Greenville Council Garden Clubs Incorporated on July 30th, 1974. Moved from its original site to the present location on North Academy Street, the house is nestled among tall trees on a sloping terrain, overlooking a restored spring, a placid pond, and extensive gardens, which are certified both as an arboretum and a backyard wildlife habitat. The house and spring are listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and visitors are welcomed for guided historic tours. The Greenville Council of Garden Clubs Incorporated takes pride in serving as the custodian of this culturally significant property and overseeing its preservation so that the current and future generations may enjoy it. The Kilgore-Lewis House is also used for wedding venues today and is located off North Academy Street. In 1820, the Reverend Rodolphus Dickerson established St. James Mission in the little village of Greenville Courthouse. Mr. Dickerson's congregation was composed mainly of a few Episcopalians whose families were spending their summers in the upper country. In 1825, Marty McBee, who also helped build Conisty Mill, donated 4 acres to the church. In 1854, the Gothic-style church was completed and stood as one of the biggest churches in Greenville. In 2014, with the help of Christ Church Guild, a beautiful stained glass window portraying Christ in the Last Supper was purchased from the Meyer Studios in Germany. This handcrafted work, both inspirational and breathtaking, has become the focal point behind the altar. Christ Church Episcopal still stands today and holds services every Sunday morning. In 1904, a 2-story brick paint shop was built by J.E. Siren for the Greenville Coach Factory, but the coming of the automobile brought the end for the production of wagons and carriages. Mark Lee decided to sell the business in 1911. In 1925, the old carriage factory paint shop building became the first factory for the production of Duke's mayonnaise. Duke's mayonnaise was eventually sold to the C.F. Sauer Company in 1929, but still operates under the same name that made the product famous. Jefferson Jackson, more prominently known as Shoeless Joe Jackson, was born in 1888. He acquired his nickname when nursing blistered feet from a new pair of spikes. Playing without them, he hit a base-clearing triple that provoked an opposing fan to cry out, "You shoeless bastard, you!" In 1919, Jackson was part of a scandal in the World Series against the Cincinnati Reds to fix the game. Jackson, acquitted and banned from baseball, would never be admitted into the Hall of Fame. Jackson's house is now 3 miles from its original foundation and sits directly next to Fluor Field. Fluor Field was built as a new home for the Greenville Dry baseball team, a High 8 East affiliate of the Boston Red Sox. Fluor Field serves as an anchor for the West End of Greenville. It was originally named West End Field, but they ended up naming it Fluor Field after the construction team that helped build it. Details reminiscent of Fenway Park include Pesky's pole, a right field pole, its own green monster or giant green wall in the left field. Fenway's is 37 feet tall, while Fluor Field stands at 30 feet, and a manual scoreboard. The old Greenville County Courthouse is located in downtown Greenville. The only example of Beaux Arts architecture in Greenville County was built in 1918, and is the 4th oldest courthouse to serve Greenville County. In 1950, the current Greenville County Courthouse was built in its present location on East North Street. The old courthouse continued to house family court until 1991. In the 1870s, when the Southern Railway first came in, the cultural center shifted from the Springs to the property of a man named Alfred Taylor. A railway depot was built on this land, and the depot officially turned into Taylor Station, officially earning the name Taylor, South Carolina. In 1938, the facility at its peak employed over 1,000 individuals, complete with its own mill, village, company store, churches, baseball fields, and even golf course. The mill sits on Mill Road near downtown Taylor, South Carolina. Today, the mill house contains many different businesses such as Junto Coffee, Southern Lumber Reclaimed, CrossFit Taylor's, Studio Church, and many more places. The heart of Taylor's existed near the present-day intersection of Taylor's Road and Main Street, beginning in the early 1900s. As civic life continued to shift up the road from Chick Springs, the pulse of the community beat much as always until the development began on a new venture in the early 1920s and completed in May 1924. The southern bleachery served as the backbone of Taylor's area from the time of its completion until its closing, continually expanding, including the completion of the Piedmont Print Works in 1928 and the eventual merger of the two companies in 1938. This stone-like basin, like Poinsett Bridge, is named for Joel R. Poinsett. Joel R. Poinsett had a stone basin made and placed beside the state road in northern Greenville County for the benefit of thirsty travelers. South Main Street in Greenville, South Carolina was once home to the Mansion House Hotel for over a century until it was torn down in 1924. The following year, the Poinsett Hotel was constructed just a few feet from the former site of the Mansion House Hotel. Ultimately, it took several months and $1.5 million to create the structure. The brand new hotel was well received across Greenville when construction finally concluded in the spring of 1925, and the owners eventually decided to name the business the Poinsett in honor of Joel R. Poinsett. The Old Dunham Bridge is one of the last remaining steel truss bridges in South Carolina. The bridge is a bright red steel truss bridge, which is a bridge whose load-bearing superstructure is composed of a truss, which is a structure of connected elements, usually forming triangular units. It was built in 1929 over the Saluda River. It was mainly used as the main route from downtown Greenville to downtown Anderson. The bridge was intact until 1990, when it became unsafe for automobiles to travel across it. The bridge sits off of Anderson Road and can now be accessed by the adjacent Dolly Cooper Park on the Powdersville side or the Greenville side of the Saluda River by walking or riding a bike. Early Greenville resident and photographer Joseph Baker wrote, "During my teenage years, I had the pleasure of driving over it, and I could always remember that it was so narrow that only one car could cross at a time. But there was always that one daredevil who just couldn't be patient." The first settler of Paris Mountain area, Richard Paris, had married a Cherokee woman and thus was given the land by the Cherokee tribe. A part of the land that Paris owned was on Paris Mountain, and that is why the mountain was named Paris Mountain. From 1890 to 1916, Greenville used Paris Mountain as its main source of water. Although the water source declined and Greenville stopped using Paris Mountain, it had other uses such as the Altamont Hotel Resort, which was built on Paris Mountain in the 1890s. The resort was sold several times and suddenly burned down due to a fire in the 1920s. The state park on Paris Mountain was built in the 1930s by the Civilian Conservation Corps, as well as 16 other parks in the state of South Carolina that were also created due to the works of the CCC, or the Civilian Conservation Corps. The land for the park was acquired in 1935 from the city of Greenville and can now be visited today. You can enter that state park and do many activities such as hiking, swimming, camping, and fishing. First National Bank, also known as Carolina First Bank, is a historic bank located in Greenville, South Carolina. Designed by architect Silas L. Throwbridge of Atlanta, Georgia, it was built in 1938 and is a 2.5-story sandstone sheath steel frame Art Deco building. The building was enlarged in 1952 and features a black granite doorframe, a base, and geometric pattern cornice, and frieze-span stylized sunburst aluminum grillwork, fluted aluminum pilasters, topped with stylized aluminum eagles. It was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1989 and currently houses a branch of the TD Bank, which merged with Carolina First Bank in 2010. Greenville County Schools purchased the site of Roper Mountain in 1974, but it would be a decade later before the Science Center would open with a horticulture facility as its first offering. The observatory's 23-inch refractor telescope, which is the 8th largest of its kind in the nation, allows visitors to view the rings of Saturn and the polar ice caps of Mars. You should be sure to visit the picnic areas, hiking trails, and butterfly cage. Public programs include Friday Starry Nights, second Saturday public days, and during the summer months, summer adventures in the Hooper Planetarium, and Symes Auditorium on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Original state legislation forming Greenville Memorial Auditorium District, or GMAD, which later became the Greenville Arena District, dates back to 1940. GMAD oversaw the Greenville Memorial Auditorium, which opened in 1958 and changed to the Greenville Arena District, or GAD. In 1998, upon the construction and opening of the Bon Secours Wellness Arena, first known as the Bilo Center. The Greenville Memorial Auditorium opened its doors before completion and held its first event, a basketball game between Furman University and the University of West Virginia, on December 1st, 1958. Today, the Bon Secours Wellness Arena holds many events such as Monster Jam, concerts, and events such as basketball games and hockey games. The arena is also home to the Greenville Swamp Rabbits hockey team. Frankie's Fun Park is a popular attraction in Greenville, South Carolina. Frankie's Fun Park is located off Woodruff Road next to Interstate 385. Frankie's has lots to offer like go-karts, rides, bumper boats, mini golf, arcade, laser tag, and much more. Since 1999, Frankie's Fun Park has been serving the upstate for 23 years with their amusement and fun. Frankie's Fun Park has 3 different go-kart tracks, which are the rookie track for the kids, the road course for the older kids and adults, and the Shamrock slide track for anyone over the age of 16, as well as 54 fun and unique putt-putt holes, bumper boats, batting cages, laser tag, and a giant arcade with games ranging from basketball to racing to crane games, as well as classics like skee-ball and virtual reality. For his senior project at Christ Church Episcopal School in 2000, Jim Ryan proposed the idea of installing a family of 9 unique mice sculptures in surprising places along Greenville's Main Street, from the Hyatt to the Westin Poinsett Hotel. Ryan made his way through the red tape involved in any city project and then raised the money, with the assistance of donors and the mayor, to complete his project. Ryan, with the help of others, soon created a Mice on Main storybook that anyone can read. Today, people like to go around and search for the mice, and if you really want to find them, you can find hints in the Mass General Store. The street address of the Mass General Store in Greenville, South Carolina, has a long retail history dating back to at least 1898 in the present-day building. The first rooms of the Mass General Store were built and opened as the Taylor General Store by Henry Taylor in 1883. Henry had run a smaller store across the road for many years and the need for expanding his offerings. It wasn't long before he had expanded his new store, and you can see where he built it on to what was now called the middle room by observing the floor during your next visit. According to city plats, this building started out as a dry goods and shoe store. Before that, it was the site of a common well and kitchen facility. John and Fay Cooper purchased the Mass General Store and reopened it in June of 1980. Since that time, the store had regained its reputation as a store that had everything. The Valet Crucis Post Office reopened in October of 1980, thus giving the Valley back its identity. And the rest, as they say, is history. Mass General is still open on Main Street and is known for their clothing gear, household items, and candy barrels. The Reedy River, named for the reeds which once grew close around its banks, flows from Travelers Rest southward for almost 60 miles. In the middle of Greenville, it tumbles into steep, narrow falls and then meanders towards Constantine before joining the Saluda River at Lake Greenwood. Its shoals and falls were an early source of power for early settlers. Greenville's Main Street is located in its shallow ford. Early water-powered industries cluster along the Reedy Rivers, and ironworks in the Cower, and Cox and Markley Coach Factory from 1835 to 1910, a sawmill, a paper-making factory, an armory, a grist, and corn mills. Later, Greenvillians established textile and apparel mills along its banks. $4.5 million structure was funded by the City of Greenville's hospitality tax, which must be spent on tourism-related facilities. At 345 feet long, 12 feet wide, and 8 inches thick, the concrete reinforced deck is supported by a single suspension cable. The deck's distinctive curve has a radius of 214 feet and is cantilevered toward the waterfall from supporting cables from the outside. The bridge deck also inclines 12 feet or 3% from east to west over the river. The bridge is built next to the Reedy River Falls, which is right where Greenville started. 10 years ago, you would have been hard-pressed to find anything in the city named for Sebagus Atticus due to the complexity of his name. That's because in 2009, the Prisma Hill Swamp Rabbit Trail first opened to our community. This has continued to develop into the 22-mile multi-use greenway system we all know and love today. Many of the other swamp rabbits you'll find around the city is due to the popularity and proximity of the trail. The Swamp Rabbit Trail follows along the historic rail bed of the Greenville and Northern Railway. Popularity nicknamed the Swamp Rabbit. Despite lofty ambitions, this short railway, part of the Greater Carolina, Knoxville, and Western Railroad, was actually once slightly longer than the current Swamp Rabbit Trail at 23 miles. Passengers of the former railroad noted how the trains stopped on the tracks like the Swamp Rabbit native to the area, thus nicknaming the line Swamp Rabbit Railroad. Funding ran out of this project in 1899, and a plan to revitalize the effort in 1907 also failed. Throughout its history, the Swamp Rabbit rarely carried passengers and was most used to haul lumber and later agricultural products and chemicals from Greenville to around the Marietta area. His voice can be heard many blocks away with a pitch that's almost heavenly. 54-year-old Nathan Roseman has been entertaining and encouraging visitors to downtown Greenville for over 16 years. His message of hope, cheerful smile, and kind words bring a smile to all who meet him. He is even rumored to be the subject of several fine art pieces displayed in many of the local art galleries. With a step in a song and a characteristic whoop whoop, he calls all who will listen to share in his uplifting story. He is an icon in Greenville history and certainly will be remembered for many years to come.
Window, oh, what cloudy day. Woo, woo. If we hold on, but while we hold on, we gotta keep on praying, cause one day, cause the day we day, everything's gonna be alright. There's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky. Woo, 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 woo. Well, that's